Someone once said that those who survive are neither the strongest nor the smartest, but are those who survive and adapt to change, becoming the true survivors in this world. Kanata demonstrated this by expertly using a rope to navigate a dangerous cliff, and then with a powerful, gravity-assisted strike, he broke through a tough rock formation. His fellow miners were astonished as he confirmed the presence of a layer of meteoria coal, a vein they had finally discovered. They praised Kanata, with one noting he blasted through a spot no one else could in one go, while Gordon asked if he had any injuries. Kanata explained that the secret was gravity, allowing one to exert a force many times their body weight, a technique he read about in a book. Gordon remarked that normal people don't bungee jump like that, but Kanata modestly said it was something anyone could do. This was the Grypton coal mine, the place where the special fossil fuel, meteoria coal, was mined, its unique gleam captivating the miners. This special fossil fuel boasted a combustion rate far surpassing regular coal and had sparked an explosive industrial revolution, leading to the creation of steam-powered cities across the country. It could only be mined in a few select sites, making it more expensive than gold. After a successful haul, the miners celebrated their payday, exclaiming "Meteoria Rush," and shouting for meat and women eager to get wasted with their fortune. The foreman handed out shares, and told Kanata his share had already been withheld, as always, for his debt. While the other miners partied loudly, Gordon found Kanata sitting alone and asked if he wouldn't join the drinking party, to which Kanata replied he was still only 16. When Gordon suggested women if alcohol was no good, Kanata, flustered by a showgirl, stated he wasn't interested. Kanata observed the revelry, wondering why everyone spent all their earnings on pleasure right away and remarking that there was no way out of this life if they kept acting that way, suggesting they should buy more books. Gordon, however, retorted that men can only spend money on romance and pleasure, and that books are only good as hard pillows, reminding Kanata that this was the death mine, where everyone risked their lives and worked for moments like these, always living next door to death. Kanata acknowledged it wasn't his place to judge how others lived, but he was definitely going to work hard to leave. His fellow miners wondered what kept a talented guy like Kanata in the death mine, as he could do so much better elsewhere, while Gordon mused that Kanata didn't belong in a dump like this, knowing it was complicated. Kanata then thought about the stuff holding him there that he couldn't escape. A flashback to 10 years ago showed a young, crying Kanata, whose full name was Kanata Icefort, arriving at the death mine. Gordon, also younger, approached him, asking what a new kid was doing there. The young Kanata wailed that he was there to work. Gordon asked if it was his first day and stated he'd give it to him straight, explaining that the meteoria coal emitted toxic light and dust, and that looking like Kanata did, he'd be at death's door by next week. He advised Kanata to get out while he still could, as gloves, a gas mask, and goggles were essential for entering the mine, which was why it was called the death mine, suggesting sweeping chimneys in town would be 100 times better. When Gordon asked why he came, Kanata tearfully confessed that his mom and dad sold him, and they told him to work there until he died to repay a debt. Gordon, after a moment of surprise, told Kanata that in the mine, lost items belong to whoever finds them, and then found his own goggles and mask, giving them to the child. Kanata reflected that without Gordon, he would have been dead long ago. Back in the present, Kanata recalled how Gordon had taken care of everything for him: food, clothes, shelter, and even gave him pens and books, while all the money Kanata earned went straight to paying off his debt. He felt he had to get out of the death mine as soon as possible and couldn't keep being a burden on Gordon. Later, at a canteen, they heard chatter about another big accident at the new dig site, where nearly 50 people had died. Kanata licked his spoon, noting that, as expected, new dig sites are the most dangerous. Gordon explained that first-time digs are a mystery. One never knows what's buried there, be it poisonous gas or unsuitable temperatures, making the better pay worthless if you die. He then mentioned strange rumors that these weren't accidents, but the work of vengeful spirits of the death mine, though no one had actually seen them. Kanata, reading a book titled Supernatural, found it interesting how such phenomena became urban legends. Gordon, teasing him about his big words, asked if Kanata wanted him to join him on his trip to town for supplies, which Kanata accepted, and Gordon decided to come just in case. They traveled by train to Pembroke, the steam engine city, where steam-powered technology had advanced remarkably thanks to its famous meteoria coal. Kanata was amazed by a steam-powered moving walkway, which he'd read about, and automatic doors at a bookstore, exclaiming, "Gordon," in excitement. Inside, Kanata, carrying a large, old-fashioned bag, bumped into a wealthy man who angrily grabbed him, demanding an apology and commenting on his ragged appearance. The man's companion sneered, questioning if the store let poor people in too. Gordon quickly apologized, and Kanata, though also saying sorry, was visibly upset. The wealthy man scoffed at the idea that literacy could save Kanata from his squalor, making his companion giggle. As the rich couple walked away, Gordon tried to cheer Kanata up, suggesting they choose a book. Suddenly, a commotion arose as people recognized someone from MRDO, Meteoria Research and Development Organization, a national research institute that studies Meteoria coal and manages the mines. Kanata was captivated by the sight of a beautiful young woman from Other miners commented on how MRDO only let in the elite and prodigies, and how they were throwing money at high-end military shop items like it was nothing, things ordinary miners could never afford. Gordon quietly suggested they go home. Kanata, however, was transfixed, thinking the girl looked like an angel from an illustration book. Gordon noticed Kanata's dazed state and realizing the cause, grinned and grabbed him, teasingly saying, "So that's your deal." Kanata, blushing and flustered, told Gordon he felt strange and wondered what the feeling was, concluding something was definitely wrong and that he should look up this possible illness in a book, while Gordon found it amusing that Kanata knew so much yet was clueless about important stuff. Later, back at the mine, a foreman announced they were finally entering the new dig site in the western zone, a task as dangerous as it gets, urging everyone to stay sharp. Gordon acknowledged the day had finally come. Kanata, with a determined look, adjusted his goggles. Deep in the Grypton coal mine, where hazardous substances accumulated over time, the miners, including Kanata operating a digging machine, worked to discover a vein, wary of potential gas leaks. They soon struck gold, unearthing a massive deposit of Meteoria coal, rich and buried so close to the surface. As they celebrated their unbelievable luck and prepared to start mining, Gordon suddenly felt something was off. His unease was justified as the ground began to rumble and crash, and someone yelled that it was collapsing and to run for their lives. From the collapsing rock, a giant, reptilian eye glared, and then a monstrous, tentacled creature, a Meteorian, emerged, snatching Gordon. Kanata, horrified, realized this was the truth behind the rumors of vengeful spirits haunting new dig sites. He leaped and dashed, trying to stab the creature, but his efforts were futile. The Meteorian, with Gordon in its grasp, prompted Gordon to yell at Kanata to live. Kanata, remembering Gordon saving him as a child and all his kindness, declared he wouldn't let someone like Gordon die, as he still hadn't repaid him, and then charged at the creature. Thinking quickly, Kanata recalled a book stating that gravity can convert height into energy and that primitive tactics like hurling stones and causing rockfalls achieved the greatest effect with the least exertion. He climbed a high ledge as the Meteorian tried to escape with Gordon, then pushed a massive boulder down onto it, screaming. The boulder struck with a screech, crushing the creature. As Kanata tended to Gordon, grateful he'd kept the monster busy, he saw it was still trying to move. Suddenly, another figure, a young man named Araya, appeared and seemed to deliver a final, decisive blow to the monster with a device, causing a large explosion of debris. Araya approached Kanata, noting the monster was taken down with one blow, and asked if Kanata was the one who wounded it and how he'd pulled it off. Kanata, flustered, stammered that someone important to him was about to be taken away, so he just chased after it and pushed a boulder on it. Araya burst into laughter, finding Kanata's serious explanation hilarious and remarking that most people would run or freeze up seeing such a monster for the first time, and that Kanata must be a special kind of crazy to face it head-on. A medic team then arrived for Araya-san. Later, Araya received a report about the civilian, Kanata, who had faced the Meteorian barehanded to rescue his colleague, showing surprisingly quick and accurate judgment for a station worker and severely wounding the creature. One of Araya's companions found it absurd that a civilian could do that, suggesting it must have been luck, while another, a young woman, was impressed. Araya, intrigued, asked for the guy's name. A week later at the coal mine management office, Gordon, now bandaged, told Kanata that orders from above dictated they forget everything they saw. The cover story was that it was just a string of lucky coincidences, and Kanata should stick to his role and do his job, nothing more. Just then, an official presented Kanata with a letter from MRDO. The letter, addressed to Kanata Icefort, was a letter of appreciation for his bravery in saving a civilian at great risk, and in light of this, MRDO wished to present him with a special offer for provisional entry into their ranks. As Kanata stared in shock, his debt was declared cleared by the mine official, who told him to pack up and get out. Those who survive and adapt to change are the true survivors in this world. Araya, lounging and smoking, mused that the mining boy, Kanata, was coming to MRDO that day, and recalled questioning him a week ago about dropping the boulder to protect someone important, asking if the possibility of hitting that person crossed Kanata's mind. Kanata, then looking battered, replied that of course it did, and to prevent that, he had calculated the best possible trajectory, he thought. Araya, amused by this intense focus, had then instructed a stern-looking young man named Elliot to keep an eye on Kanata. Starting that day, Kanata Icefort was provisionally admitted to the Meteoria Research Development Organization, commonly known as MRDO. He was utterly overwhelmed by the immense, technologically advanced facility, exclaiming, "What is this place?" An instructor explained that MRDO's foundation rested on two major energy initiatives: managing Meteoria coal mines and conducting R&D on the extracted coal, making the whole city one giant research facility that supported the country's energy. As Kanata marveled at a massive, hovering machine, thinking the place was like a world from a science fiction novel, Hilary Garcia, the girl he'd seen in town, appeared with perfect timing, exclaiming, "Ah!" And, to Kanata's surprise, enthusiastically grabbed him, saying she couldn't believe she was finally meeting him. The instructor introduced Hilary as the one who would be taking care of Kanata at MRDO, and Hilary cheerfully greeted Kanata-kun, who recognized her as the girl he saw that day. Hilary then excitedly declared they would begin their grand tour of MRDO, and Kanata, flustered, registered her name, Hilary Garcia, thinking it was a lovely name as she got a bit too close. Hilary guided Kanata through MRDO's preliminary training facility, a dedicated 2-year institute for cultivating MRDO researchers, where new members start their journey and acquire foundational knowledge before main duties begin, with career paths divided by PhD studies and coal mine operations. Kanata was surprised to learn he would be attending school, a luxury he couldn't afford before, having only known hard work. Next, Hilary grandly presented a vast library shared with MRDO, much to Kanata's amazement. He was astounded to find the complete Encyclopedia of Steam Engines and the first edition of Principles of Biology, and even more shocked that access to these books was completely free, a stark contrast to his past of reading the same worn-out books repeatedly. Hilary playfully teased him and then explained she was a second-year student and would be his tutor, telling him to help himself to food in the cafeteria, which was also free. Kanata, finding it all a bit too good to be true, savored a delicious, melting steak, a far cry from the hard, smelly meat and bread he was used to, and wished Gordon could try it, reminiscing about how Gordon, a heavy drinker with zero cooking experience, would try to make bread soup or other kid-friendly recipes with their meager supplies. While Kanata was eating, Hilary was suddenly kicked aside by Elliot, who coldly addressed Kanata, commenting on his shabbier-than-imagined appearance and questioning how someone like him could be associated with Araya-san. Other students murmured that it was Elliot, the second-year student, and that if he set his sights on you, you were done. Elliot then leaned in close to Kanata, telling him to beat it, loser, this place is not for you. And when Kanata dropped his bread, Elliot contemptuously smashed it with his foot, sneering about pathetic discount store junk and Kanata's filthy feet, calling him a morale-lowering individual who should know when to leave. Kanata, now seething, quietly asked Elliot if he would mind stepping aside. Just then, Hilary returned, realizing she was late and worried about Kanata, and was shocked to find him confronting Elliot. Before Hilary could fully intervene, Kanata swiftly pulled the tablecloth from under the food, tripping Elliot, who got tangled in it. Kanata then expertly used the tablecloth to tie Elliot up with a special knot miners use for troublemakers, leaving Hilary and other onlookers stunned by his speed and skill. Hilary exclaimed that Kanata was definitely something special and that Araya certainly had an eye for talent, while Elliot, tied up, demanded a rematch. Later, Hilary showed Kanata to his dorm room, a spacious, clean, and fresh-smelling double room, which amazed Kanata. Hilary then excitedly jumped onto one of the beds with its brand new sheets, and with a grin, told Kanata that for tonight, she wanted him to stay up late with her, causing Kanata to blush and misunderstand her intentions. Hilary clarified that they needed to conduct an aptitude test before placing him in the prep dorm, and step 1 was for him to take off all his clothes, e.g., stripped down to nothing nude. A flustered Kanata complied, and soon found himself completely naked on the bed, unable to believe Hilary was seeing him like this on their first day. Hilary, examining him, commented that his muscular development was impressive, and then asked if he had ever kissed before. When Kanata hesitantly admitted he hadn't kissed before, Hilary told him to just leave everything to her and relax, and then she kissed him. During the kiss, Kanata was overwhelmed as a small, cute, eyeball-like creature emerged from Hilary's mouth and entered his own. Moments later, Kanata, utterly bewildered, saw Hilary holding the small creature, which then transformed into a larger, monstrous version with sharp teeth. Kanata was shocked, and Hilary remarked that, as expected, there's a catch to everything, a lesson she learned the hard way, while Kanata thought that no amount of stories could prepare one for such reality. Dark tendrils then enveloped Kanata, and he felt his strength draining, realizing this was bad. Sometime later, Kanata opened his eyes to Hilary's voice, finding himself in a wheelchair. Hilary explained she had moved him while he was unconscious and reassured him that the aptitude test went well. She then showed him a room with several large glass tubes, each containing a different monstrous creature, including one resembling the tentacled beast from the mine. Hilary revealed these were Meteorians, monsters emerging from the depths of the earth, and that Kanata had already encountered one at the mining site. She explained that MRDO's true objective, unknown to the public who believed MRDO focused only on 2 energy-related departments, was researching and secretly exterminating these Meteorians through a 3rd department. This department, specializing in countermeasures for the Meteorian threat, was called the Meteorian Special Operations and Research Department, nicknamed Takikin, and Araya Crawford was in charge of it. Hillary elaborated that meteorians, essentially pests, only appear in deadly mining sites where the special fossil fuel is extracted, often triggered by new excavations, and they get in the way of coal extraction, which is why Takikin was established. Kanata, realizing this was what had happened to him during the aptitude test, learned he had been selected as a Takikin prep student through an exceptional civilian recommendation, as only the most outstanding candidates are admitted to this elite department. Having successfully cleared the aptitude test, they were concerned about. Hillary formally congratulated him. When Kanata, still dazed, asked what kind of work this department did, Hillary informed him that his assignment would be to join Takikin's combat unit and risk his life fighting against meteorians. The scene ended with a heartfelt letter from Kanata to Gordon, expressing his deep gratitude, acknowledging this letter might be his first and last, and stating that they were in this together and should give it their all. The new Takikin recruits were informed that they would begin with a combat aptitude exam, where their job was to fight meteorians, and Kanata internally struggled to process this, remembering being attacked by a monster. Hillary explained they were conducting a compatibility test to see if they could implant a companion, which Kanata passed, and since he couldn't take on meteorians as a normal human, they were equipping him with a special power via the little creature in the pod, which was his companion for life. She urged Kanata to hurry as they needed to get to the real exam, and as they ran, Kanata realized he needed to stay calm and adapt, having lived under harsh conditions his whole life. The instructor announced that to qualify as a Takikin fighter, each recruit must defeat one of the meteorians about to be released, and examiners, who were last year's successful candidates including a surprised Hillary, would grade their performance. Kanata was shocked to see Hillary among them, and even more so when their esteemed commander, Araya Crawford, was introduced as a special guest, causing a stir among the recruits who recognized him as a legend holding the record for most meteorian eliminations and the youngest in history to achieve the highest rank in Takikin, a prodigy in combat research and the best in MRDO. Many recruits, including one who declared Araya was the reason he joined, were eager to get top scores and join the Crawford division, as the exam also determined which division they'd join. Suddenly, a confident young woman named Abby Muller declared first place was hers, unsettling the other recruits, while Kanata felt increasingly out of his depth, not knowing about divisions or Jezendal. A nervous boy apologized to Kanata for being annoying, and Kanata, overwhelmed, wished the exam would be cancelled. The instructor then unveiled the meteorian they would be fighting, a massive, blocky, centipede-like creature, horrifying Kanata. The instructor announced a 3-hour time limit, no assistance, and a warning that participants die in this exam every year, urging everyone to unleash their special powers. As other recruits activated their powers, Kanata and the nervous boy stood frozen, and Hillary, seeing Kanata's confusion, offered to teach him how to release his special power, instructing him to look at his companion, focus, and connect, in his mind. Kanata, though bewildered, closed his eyes and tried, and suddenly his companion creature transformed into a large, ice-spiked form, unleashing a massive wave of ice that engulfed the area. Araya watched with a patient smile, while an instructor noted the kid was going to fail at that rate if he didn't control his companion. Elliot then roughly woke Kanata, who had blacked out from the uncontrolled power surge, and introduced himself as the examiner grading him, reminding him of their cafeteria encounter and delivering a message from Araya. If Kanata didn't pass this exam, he would die. Elliot explained that Kanata had received a rushed Meteoria parasitic implant, a classified biological weapon, and since his companion had gone berserk, returning to civilian life was not allowed. While other students might be reassigned if they failed, Kanata, being different, would be terminated as an inconvenient existence if he didn't make it as a fighter. Araya, observing, thought it was time for the minor boy to prove his potential. As the exam resumed and meteorians were released, Elliot told Kanata to do his best to stay alive. Kanata, feeling the unfairness of his situation and recalling how knowledge from books was his only means of survival, felt powerless against the cruel world. As a meteorian lunged, Abby Muller swiftly destroyed it, telling Kanata to get lost if he wouldn't fight. The examiners noted Abby, Viscount Muller's daughter from a long lineage of royal knights, passed in a record 60 seconds flat. As Abby Muller walked away after her record-breaking pass, Araya observed impassively, while other recruits, seeing her success, commented that this year's meteorian seemed pretty weak and that the exam would be a piece of cake. One overconfident recruit charged a meteorian with his flower-like companion, yelling, "Let's go, buddy!" But his attack bounced off, and the meteorian impaled him, shocking Kanata and the nervous boy. The recruits quickly realized the meteorian's shells were fully armored, their attacks were useless, and people actually died here every year, as those legs suddenly extended. Panic ensued, and some recruits started running, with Elliot taunting one for being the first to flee, while Kanata realized Abby was just special and fighting seriously wouldn't help. The remaining recruits decided to maintain distance, and medics were called as the examinees dispersed into the woods. An instructor reported to Araya that the examinees had scattered, and Araya, surrounded by floating eyeball-like monitors, began observing the individual battles on a large, multi-screen display. Kanata, meanwhile, ran through the woods, trying to find cover and formulate a plan, when he heard the nervous boy, Sim, crying for help as a meteorian cornered him. Elliot, watching from afar, wondered what the peasant, Kanata, was doing. Kanata rushed in and pushed Sim out of the way, taking a blow from the meteorian himself, and urged Sim to get out of there, reassuring him he was fine despite his injury. As they fled, with the meteorian in pursuit, Sim tearfully asked Kanata why he saved someone like him, as he didn't benefit from it. Kanata, recalling his own past when Gordon had saved him, simply replied that when someone saved him, it made him happy, and Sim, overwhelmed, cried that having someone help him had never happened before. Sim then introduced himself and thanked Kanata, who in turn introduced himself. As they shook hands, Kanata's injured hand began to freeze over, shocking Sim, who apologized profusely. Sim, then recognizing the phenomenon from books, explained that Kanata's companion, a cryoparasitic symbiosis, was attempting to repair his damaged cells, essentially a healing power, an incredibly rare ability with very few compatible users. Kanata, concerned they were still in danger, used his companion to survey the area, and Sim noticed Kanata's eyes were glowing, realizing Kanata had long-range vision that worked through his eyes, covering several kilometers. Sim lamented that his own ability was useless in combat, a worthless ability suiting him, but Kanata, focused on how to use his meteorian power and not wanting to experience another rampage, began making preparations, recalling his sensei's advice about playing it safe. While Sim wondered about enhanced physical abilities or something cool, Kanata swiftly constructed several traps using vines and branches with just one hand, impressing Sim, who wondered who Kanata really was. Kanata, remembering Gordon teaching him to use his feet like hands when necessary, thought his rough working conditions were paying off, and Elliot, observing from a distance, noted Kanata was making up for combat disadvantage with guerrilla tactics. As Kanata wondered how to get better at controlling his power, Sim eagerly offered to teach him as thanks, but Elliot intervened, stating that examinees must stay apart and teamwork was not allowed in this test of individual capabilities, warning they were both about to be disqualified. Sim, apologizing for getting Kanata injured, pushed him away, wishing him good luck and telling him to pass the exam. Elliot then approached Kanata, remarking that being clever wouldn't help if his combat ability remained undeveloped, and that with his dominant hand injured, his situation was hopeless, declaring that MRDO was not for people like him and he never had a chance. More recruits, Negoro Gardner, Stella Rockwell, Zumarlin, and Tawa Galoria, managed to pass the exam by defeating their Meteorians, and those who passed were directed to move aside, discussing how aiming for the Meteorian's belly seemed to be the sole weak spot since its back was impossible to penetrate. Instructors noted that some had figured out the basic strategy, and Araya remarked it could be a good year for talent, though he internally sighed that this wasn't what the exam was about, and no one had understood its true purpose. Elliot observed Kanata, noting there was only an hour left and Kanata would fail if he didn't act soon, and after about an hour of Kanata remaining still, Elliot wondered what he was up to, thinking anyone would fail him if he just stood there. Kanata, however, had been observing the Meteorians and noticed that for some reason, they all kept their tails buried, even in combat, rushing to rebury them if taken out briefly, leading him to believe there must be a reason. He investigated a hole where a tail had been buried and, to Elliot's disgust and confusion, even tasted the dirt, finding no residue, just ordinary dirt flavor. Kanata then used one of his preset traps to ensnare a Meteorian in a hole and attempted to damage it with a large rock, recalling that physical damage had worked on his first encounter, but the rock attack was completely deflected by the Meteorian's tough outer shell, confirming that outside attacks were ineffective. He then considered the creatures inside, recalling that turtles and crabs have soft undersides and pill bugs protect their bellies by curling up, deducing that the Meteorian's belly must be vulnerable and that's why they curled up to defend. With no time left, Kanata decided it was all or nothing and aimed for its stomach segments as it crawled up, but his improvised spear attack did nothing, not even leaving a mark, and he was thrown aside. He realized that even its weak point was too much for him and he couldn't match its power. As Kanata's injured hand began to ice over again, he realized it wasn't truly healing, only stopping the bleeding, and knew he couldn't place hope in uncertain ties, deciding to focus on what was happening now and think of a practical way to take the Meteorian down with his current strength. He dodged another attack and, cornered, desperately thought about a true weak point, pondering why it always kept its tail buried. He reasoned that creatures don't typically eat during combat, so it wasn't feeding, and his theory about them using vibrations to communicate or sound to attract attention had also been disproven after testing. He was left with the last option, breathing. Unlike fish with gills or mammals with lungs, these creatures, with their completely sealed surfaces, must have another way to breathe, a vital function they couldn't avoid. He then recalled arthropods having respiratory organs called spiracles, holes connecting the shell to internal organs, and concluded that the Meteorian's breathing tail must be the only passage from its hard shell to its delicate, vulnerable internal organs, making it its true weakness. With only 5 minutes left, Elliot watched, preparing to bid Kanata farewell. Kanata, needing to confirm if the tail was for breathing, set up a net trap and baited the Meteorian, planning to force its defensive instincts and strike in the momentary opening before it fully curled up. As the Meteorian took the bait and its tail emerged from the ground, Kanata knew he had mere seconds to land a perfectly aimed attack, thinking it was now or never, and if he missed, he would most likely die. Flashing back to the hardships of his life, being sold by his parents, the dangers of the mine where he learned to adapt to survive, and the humiliations he endured, he resolved that to protect those important to him and climb up from rock bottom, he wouldn't let anything else be taken away from him. With a surge of power, his icy fist connected with the Meteorian's tail, and Araya, sensing the change, exclaimed, "That's it," as Kanata declared, "This is my adaptation," and a massive explosion of ice destroyed the Meteorian. Kanata wrote to Gordon, explaining that being at MRDO, their nation's top steam tech city, brought new thrills every day and was very different from the coal mines. Hillary congratulated Kanata, who, adjusting his new uniform, thought about how he had passed a life-threatening entrance exam and become a preparatory student at a secret research organization. He then joined Hillary, Elliot, Ebby Muller, and another student, where Araya Crawford welcomed them to the Crawford Seminar, announcing he would be their special professor for the next 2 years. Hillary gushed to Kanata that the Crawford Seminar was the hardest to get into, a special small group class with elite Tokican researchers as guests, and Kanata must be truly special to have passed. Ebby Muller, however, aggressively questioned how Kanata got first place over her, a sentiment Elliot and Hillary also seemed curious about, as Kanata was the last one to return during the exam and Ebby had passed instantly. Araya explained that Kanata's ability to formulate hypotheses was the highest because everyone else, especially Ebby, used brute force against the Meteorian, completely destroying the important core, which Araya revealed was like a Meteorian's heart and an important reusable resource. Kanata was surprised to see a core emerge from the dead enemy, and Araya elaborated that when the core is weakened and parasitically implanted into a human body, they can borrow the Meteorian's abilities, which is how they fight at Tokican, shocking Kanata as he realized his companion creature was a Meteorian core. Araya continued that MRDO's purpose was research, not military operations, and special orders like capturing specimens alive or retrieving cores happened frequently, so raw power wasn't always the right approach. They needed to use their smarts while fighting. He pointed out that when humans encounter something unknown and can't devise a proper strategy, they resort to brute force, but those with accumulated knowledge and bold insights can form hypotheses, a crucial trait for researchers that the exam assessed. Kanata had excelled naturally at this without guidance, his theoretical thinking among the best they'd seen, which was why Araya absolutely wanted him in his seminar and why Kanata passed with unanimous top marks, despite the mockery Kanata recalled from minors about why he'd need to read books. Araya advised Kanata to first develop his ability to form hypotheses, and for that, to study hard and have fun. Just as Araya asked if that answered Ebby's question, Kanata, moved to tears at being acknowledged, was interrupted by someone reporting an emergency to Araya-san. As Araya left, Elliot taunted Kanata not to get cocky, and Hillary berated Elliot for his behavior. Kanata, bewildered, asked about their relationship, and Hillary, flustered, revealed that Elliot was her twin brother, shocking Kanata, who then apologized for his previous lack of respect towards Elliot. Hillary, however, called Elliot a hopeless garbage brother and told Kanata not to worry, praising Kanata's maturity. Later, as the students were leaving, Hillary cheekily asked Kanata if he wasn't going to invite her into his room, flustering him further before she laughed and said she'd see him tomorrow. Entering his dorm room, Kanata was startled to find someone already there. It was Sim, who was equally surprised. They were both overjoyed to learn they had passed, gotten into the special research dorm, and were even roommates. Sim apologized for running away earlier, offering Kanata candy, and explained he was scouted, while Kanata said he heard Sim was from the mines. Sim then asked Kanata why he joined MRDO, and Kanata, after a pause, said it was probably just personal, but he wanted to know more about Meteorians, as he'd heard he could learn more through MRDO and there was so much they didn't know, having been researching them out of curiosity. He then casually mentioned something about Meteorians being the raw material for Meteoria coal, which shocked Kanata, who had no idea. Sim explained that Meteorian corpses and their eggs fossilized in the ground become Meteoria coal, and that cores, Meteorians, and Meteoria coal were all the same thing, just with tricky terminology, common knowledge among the elite. Kanata was stunned, realizing this was a truth intentionally hidden from commoners like him, who were made to dig it up without a chance to wonder, accepting the prosperity brought by steam technology without much thought. He pondered what exactly they were burning and what Meteorians truly were. Meanwhile, Araya was being briefed that the Meteoria 0 wasn't extremely important and that the boy, Kanata, was the right choice, as his adaptation rate was faster than expected. Araya acknowledged that great power comes with great sacrifice and that carelessness is forbidden, as everyone implanted with absolute zero had died within 6 months. If the host doesn't